Good morning. Happy Thursday. Today is the day that Jupiter rules, and Jupiter is currently in Gemini. Jupiter is ruled by Sagittarius. Jupiter rules Sagittarius. Let me say this. Good morning. I'm the Moon Mama. Before I start talking, let me say a little bit about who I am. I'm the Moon Mama, and my passion and work is to assist myself and others in using the astrology to navigate these very uncertain times. The astrology is the cosmic map, and it is consistent. It has been working for billions of years. Our ancestors have used it. We just happen to be in an interesting dimension where ignorance is the experience, where we don't know how to use cosmology, and we are learning again. We're in this state of memory. So today, Mercury is in the final days of its retrograde, meaning it's going backwards cycle. It turns direct on the 15th, and today is it's Thursday, and so it turns direct on Sunday. My mind is a little. It turns direct on Sunday. So we have Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and Sunday before Mercury actually turns direct. So this is a powerful opportunity to do some deep healing work around the stories you tell yourself, because Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius is to assist us in shifting our faith. And faith is, the evidence of things unseen, but we have to have a relationship to faith. We have to really understand that there are things in the workings that we cannot see with our eyes, that are happening, that are moving, that are shifting, that we cannot perceive, but it's happening. And this is faith. And this is always the case. Like, for those of us who are mothers, you know that you gave birth to somebody who at birth was 6 pounds, but then, just when they start to grow and they become an adult, there is a mechanism inside of them that is growing them. You didn't have to do anything to make that happen. There is a mechanism that allowed that inspired that, and we have faith in it, and we know that it works, and we have faith that the next day is going to come because there is evidence of it. And so we can begin to root ourselves in these systems that are functioning behind the scenes that you cannot see, and we can have faith in how they work. The cycles, they work on the cycles are been doing, like the moon cycle has been doing what the moon has been doing for as long as it's been there. The sun cycle says as long as it's been there, and we can have faith in that. And because of that, we can know, okay, the sun is going to be doing this, so I'm going to activate this energy, and I have faith that it's going to function because I know that this cycle works, right? So faith. And today Mercury is at the 7th degree, and the 7th degree is the degree that is ruled by Libra, which is about how you show up to partnerships, how you show up to this 3D reality. In Western astrology and modern astrology, they say that Libra is the house of marriage and partnership. And really, Libra is the house that brings you into the earth realm, because everything else before Libra, from Aries to Virgo, is the inner world. And Libra to Pisces is the external world. So Libra is the first place where we are in an experience with another. And what do you bring to that experience? It's not about the other, because the other is simply a reflection. What they don't say is that your partner is a reflection of you. And what are they reflecting back to you is who you are. They're reflecting to you who you are. So, and it's also about the story that we tell of this 3D reality. And one of the things that I've been really paying attention to, because I've been adjacent to it all my life, is the story of what's going on with Sean Combs and a little bit. I don't have as much, because I went to Howard with Sean Combs at the time that he was there. And I remember who he was. I remember how he behaved there. I remember how he was very much a party promoter, and that was all he did. It was all he was doing. He was always handing out a flyer to a party and dancing. That was it. And so it's been interesting to see this evolution of his experience. And recently there has been this this lawyer suing Jay-Z. And there are a lot of people talking about, R-wording children, right? Like children, and it's sexual deviance with children. And it's so important that we understand that these behaviors, whether people are guilty of it or not, these behaviors don't start in a vacuum. This behavior of sexual deviance with Black people started 400 years ago. And as much as we want to hold the person in the modern system accountable, and they should be, I'm not saying that they should not be, I'm saying that it's important for us to tell the whole story, to tell the whole story of what is going on with sexual deviance. And we know, like, how do I say this? Because I want it to be, so the story of the monarch butterfly, the biology of the monarch butterfly. Let's start with a metaphor. The monarch butterfly starts in Canada, and it migrates from Canada to Mexico. It travels across the United States. The first generation of butterflies take off. They fly, maybe 3 or 4 days, and then they lay down. They lay eggs, and they die. They literally lay eggs and they die, somewhere up in the northern part of America. And those eggs then at some point hatch, become caterpillars. They eat because they need energy. Then they form a cocoon. Those cocoons are filled with caterpillar larvae, and then that cocoon becomes a butterfly. It opens up and it continues on the same route that the butterfly that laid it, the egg, the butterfly that was his mother, it stays on the same route because the pattern is programmed into the butterfly to keep the same route. Nobody had to tell it where to go. No one had to teach it. No one had to give it a map or, GPS. The GPS is in its system, so it's going to repeat the behavior of its parents until it gets to Mexico. That butterfly that then hatches from that cocoon flies for, say, another 6 or 7 days, and then it lays eggs and dies. And then another caterpillar is born. I mean, this happens for, this is the process. And so why would humans be different is what I'm trying to say. Humans are the same. We repeat the behaviors of the generation before us until someone comes along who has the power, the wherewithal, the mindset to break the pattern. Now, Black people in America, Black people who they say were slaves and all of that, we spent 400 years in captivity. 400 years in captivity, where the women and the men were raped on a regular, consistent basis. They don't want to use the word, we're R-worded, on a regular, consistent basis. If you do your own research, this is just one example. There was a plantation in Texas where there were over 1,000 captive people who were all fathered by the owner of that plantation. Most of them fathered by the owner of that plant. 1,000 people fathered by one man. And just because these stories aren't told, just because we don't know about it, doesn't mean that we aren't reaping the effects of it in our lives on a daily basis. Because genetics, yes, well, and that's just one. That's just one. That's just one. Genetics is more powerful than your ego assumptions. Genetics is more powerful than your morality. Genetics is more powerful than your laws. Genetics is going to win until someone has the courage to stop the cycle. Now, the cycle is strong in your bloodline. The cycle is strong in your system. Like, I have a grandmother, she's not alive any longer, but my great-grandmother worked in Alabama in somebody's house in the 1920s. She worked as a servant in someone's house. She was raped by the owner of that home, produced my grandmother. She had 5 children already who were the color of cherries. They were dark like cherries, right? And then she came home pregnant. She had a husband, and she produced my grandmother, who was obviously a half-white child. And, you know, my grandmother raised her like she raised everybody else. It was just the way it was. You had to go to work. You needed to feed your family. Your boss is sexually molesting and rape. You know, it was just how it was. The people of the time didn't have sovereignty over their bodies. It occurred to them that they didn't have choices, and they had been for generations not owning themselves, for generations. So when we now are seeing this media cry of, you know, sexual deviance and the R-wording of children and unwilling participants, this behavior has been practiced for hundreds of years in this country. We are only 200 years or so out of the practices. Like, I feel like we have been longer. So slavery ended in 1870 something, I think. I don't know the exact dates in my mind. So then you put 1970, that is 100 years, and then 2070. And so we're not at 2000. It hasn't been 200 years yet. And these energetic codes are encoded of, you know, sexual deviance and all sorts of behaviors that have not been reconciled. We don't live in a country that has taken responsibility, let alone people keep talking about reparations. This is not about money, okay? You know, we want to make everything about money. Money is the least of it. This is about reframing our identities. This is about taking our humanity back. This is about claiming ourselves as human and not at the effect of people who want to brutalize and capitalize upon your body and your humanity. This is so much deeper than what we are being fed in the media. And I don't have an expectation for white people to get it, especially young white people but as Black people, it is our responsibility to understand what we have endured and to take responsibility for what we're feeling and the choices we're making and what's happening in our families and in our bodies. And it's showing up as illnesses. It's showing up as mental health challenges. It's showing up as all manner of things that have not been addressed because no one cares if we don't care. No one can do anything if we don't make it our responsibility. So that is what I have done in my life. There's this movie, the movie Lincoln. I don't know if you guys have ever seen the movie Lincoln by Steven Spielberg. even though the story of him has been romanticized a great deal, and is mostly false because he was not someone who really wanted to free the slaves, I still love movies. I'm just a movie lover. And this movie has a scene of Lincoln with his son. He had a son who was sickly, and this son would spend time looking at pictures of enslaved people, captive people who had been beaten, and his father was always like, why are you looking at that? You know what I mean? Like, he would, this child was obsessed with the people who were enduring this incredible terror that was happening. And I was that kind of child. I was a little girl who just spent so much time researching and understanding and wondering and asking questions about, what is this Black experience? What is happening here? Why are we enduring so much? What is the purpose of it? And in my studies, it has helped me formulate my own understanding. It has helped me activate my own healing process. It has helped me know that I'm connected to the women in my family who endured generations of enslavement in Alabama, in Texas, in Mississippi, because in Louisiana. And though those stories are not being told and we're not being given resources to do the work to heal ourselves, it's my responsibility to make sure I'm okay. It's not anybody. It would be great if we had a whole kumbaya, a moment, and this country woke up and did something to reconcile what occurred. It would be fantastic. But if it's not, I'm going to take it on myself, because I can't walk around with that level of terror and trauma in my system. I'm just too sensitive. Sensitive. So it's very important that, as all of these media stories come out about, Black people, yes, they are responsible for their choices. And yes, they will be held accountable in the ways that they need to be spiritually and in this real-time world. Growing up in the Black community has been very interesting to me, because I made a video yesterday on TikTok where I talked about, they were saying, I heard this young woman say, Jay-Z sold drugs to his community. And I'm like, I remember the crack epidemic in the 80s and 90s. I was there. And I remember how that experience was set up for Black people. There were no jobs. There had just been a war where people had come home from Vietnam and Black people weren't given, people fought in wars and they weren't given resources. Reagan had just emptied out the mental health hospitals. Like, people are talking about these experiences, and I'm just using Jay-Z and Sean Combs because they are the ones that happen to be on the public stage. But what our community endured, the government set up our community, removed the jobs, removed any upward mobility, economic upward mobility. And then Ronald Reagan and George Bush Sr. put crack cocaine in the Black community, and with no jobs. And so a lot of Black men started selling drugs because it felt like an economic shift. Was it right? I don't know. Was it an option? It was an option. And people cheered them on as heroes because they had things, they had cars, they had houses. Some of them were feeding their communities. It was a really different time. And if you weren't there, you don't know the story. And then the government created the prison system to then take the people who sold the drugs that they put in the community, that the community was so upset about. And the community was like, this is horrible. You're right, because it destroyed the community. And then the government created the prison system, the privatized prison system, to then take all of those people and put them in jail to capitalize upon it. Like, this is a very tricky thing that's happening here. And when these two notable people, that at that time, they were 17 and 18 years old. They were, you know what I mean? And there were thousands of them. It just so happens that Jay-Z and Sean Combs are on the public stage. There were thousands of them. I watched my entire peer group of males go to jail. I watched it happen. I watched boys who were 15, 16, and 17 go to jail for 10 years. And it was very interesting to me because I realized that, like, I didn't choose to sell drugs. My father was a drug dealer, but I didn't. So I also know that they were at choice. So I'm just telling the story. I'm not saying what was right or what was wrong. I'm just telling the full story so that we understand that there is more happening here than this moment now. Nothing happens in a bubble. Everything is cause and effect. Everything is one choice leading to the next. And it's not just one person's choice. So from the inception of this country, when somebody chose to make Black people the enslaved population and make us the baby makers and the people who would create the economy of this country. Like, you got to fucking know the whole story. Like, we have been that. And so if you are going to have a judgment call, it's best to refrain from judgment. It's best to just see what's happening, just to be able to be a witness of it. Because what you judge comes back to you. What you judge, you own. Like, that's the truth. That's why the Bible says, judge not so that you don't be judged. But if you think you want to judge it, go understand the whole story. Find it all out so that you are clear about what you're witnessing and understand that it's not just these two men who have made some choices that are interesting. This is something that happened in a much larger scale, and it has so much more to do with humans that are beyond Sean and Jay. You know, it's just greater than that. So everyone, and here's the thing, whether people go to prison or not, everyone pays their dues when your bill is due, because that is how cause and effect works. Your bill will be paid, whether you are the person who took people in captive. Your family will pay that bill. The people who worked for free and the people who benefited from, people being enslaved, your family will pay that bill, whether you pay it in money or not. Your people will get sick. They will die of cancer. You will have unhappy relationships. You will not be able to rest if you don't reconcile the choices that were made earlier. Nothing is free. Energetically, nothing is free. So America's not getting away with anything. Even if they never say we recognize what we done, they're never gonna get away with it, because that's not how it works. Everything comes to collect. Everything. The devil will collect its debt. It's how it is. So I love y'all. If y'all want to get readings to understand how this stuff is playing out in your own life, come book your sessions, because I have done the work. I have done the work to heal my lineage and my legacy. I know what it takes. That's why I can sit here and say this, because I've done the work and I know what it takes, and I can teach others how to do it. Whether you're black or white, I can teach. I have worked with, white women who have racist fathers and help them reconcile that inside of themselves. I know how to do the work. So if you want to do the work, healwithmoonmama.com. Peace and blessings, y'all. Have a beautiful day.